So I watched the Evil Dead franchise for the first time, from the first one to Evil Dead Rise. Now let's talk about it. Welcome into Grimm's Gates of Horror. My name is Grim. This is New Haven for all things horror movie related and TV show related. I'm here to rank the entire Evil Dead franchise from the worst to the best, starting from Evil Dead 1 to the second one to Army of Darkness to the TV show Ash vs. Evil Dead, the Evil Dead remake from 2013, and Evil Dead Rise. I'm here to tell you my order in which they go in from the worst to the best. And this is a franchise that I did not grow up watching. I was born in 2003. So the horror franchises that I grew up with were like Chucky. I discovered that one on my own. Halloween, Insidious. I discovered Paranormal Activity on my own. Friday the 13th on my own. So it's like, and so Evil Dead was one of those franchises that I never watched. I never watched any of the movies. And I just felt like sitting down watching these movies for the first time. There's a bunch of other franchises I still have to watch. Nightmare on Elm Street, I've only seen the original and the remake that came out. I still haven't watched any Hellraiser, any Saw. I actually own the Saw movies, just haven't seen any of them. I need to do that. So there's a lot of franchises I still have to watch, so I'm trying to just go through them. I plan to do a lot of them in October, but for now, right now I'm doing Evil Dead. Let me know how you would rank these down below in the comments, and let me know what you think of my order, because I know it's probably going to be very, very divisive in the comments because of where I put some of these movies in my ranking. So starting us off in 8th place, we have Evil Dead 2, which I know a lot of people say is the best one, I believe, and it's really loved, it's the most beloved. But for me, I just did not like it. But first, starting off, Ash Williams returns to a remote cabin with his girlfriend Linda, where he accidentally unleashes demonic forces by playing the tape of incantations from the Necronomicon, and Linda gets possessed, and Ash is forced to kill her, only for her corpse to keep coming back. As the night unfolds, Ash battles Deadites, loses his hand, and teams up with new arrivals to survive the chaos. Now, throughout this movie, we see Ash's descent into madness, and it's visceral, as the cabin becomes a surreal funhouse of torment, with laughing furniture, mocking reflections, and a possessed hand that turns against him, and he has to cut it off. And it's all a metaphor for him losing control, both mentally and physically. In the movie basks in mutilation and mutation, as Ash's severed hand becomes a character of its own, and his chainsaw prosthetic is a badge of survival almost, and it's just a twisted take on self-reinvention, which I did appreciate. I did like those parts. And we see Ash's journey from a victim to a reluctant hero, and it's all just ironic. His transformation shows that he's not just surviving, he's embracing the madness that's going on around him. And Bruce Campbell as Ash Williams is a masterclass in physicality, especially just throughout this whole franchise. He's thrown, slammed, dragged, and it's all by invisible forces most of the time. And then his just facial expressions just makes him a legendary actor, in my opinion. But for me, and just a scene where he battles his own hand, it's just really impressive how he's able to do that so perfectly. And then his ability to go from terror to comedy within a second in a single beat makes Ash a uniquely compelling. Then we have Sarah Berry as Annie, Dan Hicks as Jake, and others serve as kind of the bait, but they also ground the chaos with more traditional reactions. But the reason this movie is so low on the list for me is that I just did not think the comedy in this movie was funny. I did not laugh throughout this whole movie, and it kind of just made it just got so chaotic, and it just felt like this movie was just dragging, and it kept dragging on. The humor, I just did not get it. It just wasn't for me. I did not laugh at it. But this movie is really well made from my standpoint. Raimi's camera is a character in itself, as it zooms, spins, and crashes through the woods. The use of the shaky cam and POV shots that's throughout this whole franchise for the evil force just creates that sense of dread that I loved. And then the practical effects that he uses, stop motion animation, the exaggerated gore, and puppetry, give the movie a handmade, especially when it's like messy, gooey, and like over the top. It's just also, this movie shows like the master class of practical effects and why they're so much better than CGI in my opinion. But yeah, just that slapstick humor thrown in with like the horror, gore, and all that, I just was not a fan of it. The movie's tone is like a mix between grotesque horror with like absurd slapstick comedy that it just feels like it's like there's no like build up to it. There's no like stop for like any like serious moments or like moments to like develop these characters, and it just comes off just not scary or funny. And for people who are a fan of stuff like this, the pacing is probably like quick and like fast for them, but for me it just dragged because of how much I just did not laugh. I did not get like, this movie did not make me react as I thought it would, and it just irks me because I know a lot of people love this movie, but it's just, for me, I did not feel any of that. And I'm not gonna say this movie is bad, it's just a movie that is just not for me. It's not, I'm just not a fan of it, and for that reason alone I give it a C minus, a 4 out of 10. And I'm not gonna put it any lower than that because yeah, I did not enjoy it, but it's not a badly made movie. It's really well made, it's just not for me. So that's why it's kind of like, whenever there's a movie like this, I just put in C plus, C minus, because it doesn't deserve to be lower than this. Going into 7th place, we have Evil Dead 2013. Evil Dead 2013 is the remake, which follows a group of 5 friends who retreat to a remote cabin to help Mia overcome a heroin addiction, but their detox getaway turns into a nightmare when they discover the Nocturne de Manto, which is like the Necronomicon, a sinister book that unleashes a demonic force. One by one, the group is possessed, mutilated, and killed in increasingly gruesome ways. The things I did like about this remake is it isn't just about gore. It's it's layered with the metaphor and emotional weight, as Mia's heroin withdrawal is the central metaphor, and her erratic behavior is dismissed as detox symptoms, but it mirrors the demonic possession. The movie blurs the line between internal struggle and supernatural invasion, making her battle deeply personal. And the cabin becomes a vessel of mistrust as Maya's cries for help are ignored, reinforcing how addiction isolates and invalidates sufferers. Her descent into possession is a chilling parallel to being abandoned in recovery. Then we have David's arc, who is like the main protagonist, as he is Mia's, and his arc is steeped in guilt as he missed their mother's death and Mia's early cries for help through her addiction. And his final act of burying Mia alive towards the end to purge the demon from her and to bring her back to life is both horrifying and redemptive, symbolizing a rebirth of redemption. And this movie is filled with body horror, the grotesque mutilations, self-amputations. There was a scene where someone's tongue gets split in half, and I was surprised by how many times I just like cringed or just like got uncomfortable. There were scenes where people's skin was boiling, but not just shock tactics. They reflect the loss of agency and identity, especially in Mia's transformation and eventual reclaiming of herself. And then I think the cast did well as well. Jane Levi as Mia, she channels vulnerability, rage, and terror with a ferocity. Her dual role as an addict and then turning into a deadite looks physically like punishing and emotionally layered. Her turning into the final girl by the end is something I did not see coming, as it's blood soaked. She's one-handed and wielding a chainsaw, almost like Ash from the original. It just mirrors someone who was struggling with an addiction and turning like survivor. They survived their addiction, and I just loved how they portrayed that. Shiloh Fernandez as David is the reluctant hero, as his performance is understated but is effective, as especially in scenes with Mia, as he's more of like the emotional restraint, and his emotional restraint contrasts with the chaos around him. And then we have the characters of Eric, Olivia, and Natalie, who their roles are more like archetypes than anything, and they basically sell the horror, as Olivia's bathroom scene as she's like cutting her jaw off, and Natalie's self-amputation are just unforgettable. Both actresses lean to the physicality, but I just feel like their characters, along with Eric's, are just underdeveloped. The remake is directed by Fede Alvarez, who I know from I know he directed Alien Romulus, but I haven't seen that movie yet. The only movies of his that I've seen are the Don't Breathe movies. But I love Fede Alvarez's approach to horror, as it's really raw and like grounded, and he chose to go with practical effects over CGI, which is what I was worried about when watching a remake that came out in 2013. But it turns out he insisted on real blood and prosthetics, which I appreciate so much. And supposedly he used 70,000 gallons of fake blood, and that's beautiful. I wish someone would soak me in 70,000 gallons of fake blood. That sounds so beautiful. The result is tactile, visceral, and stomach churning in the best way. And just the way he uses visual language, like cinematography, it is desaturated and grim, punctuated by vivid reds as the blood flows. I just love a good, which is what he provides. Just the close-ups on like wounds and like amputations and expressions, amplifying discomfort and dread. It's just like, it's so beautiful how he does this. And then the tone and pacing, unlike Sam Raimi's like campy original, this version is relentlessly serious. The first half builds psychological tension, with the second half exploding into carnage, and he doesn't flinch with his directing. It escalates the tension, and it's just amazing. But with all this being said, I just feel like this movie doesn't dig deep into the lore as I wish they would. Develop the lore a little bit more, and also developing the side characters that we have. We didn't get enough on them, I feel like. And I feel like we should have gotten a little bit more between David and Mia, as I feel like we weren't connected to these characters enough to really like feel like that emotion between the two, as we see David like sacrifice himself to save Mia as like a redemption thing, and I just did not like. I feel like this movie should have made me feel something, not just with all the gore and like the blood and all that, but with like some emotion. I feel like with a movie that was going for the story to be layered, I felt like it was kind of underdeveloped. They should have focused a little bit more on that. I give Evil Dead 2013 a B-. Moving on to sixth place, we have Army of Darkness, which is a wild ride of horror, some more of that slapstick like comedy, and medieval mayhem that tosses a bunch of genres together. And in this movie, we see Ash, a chainsaw-handed shotgun-wielding hero, as he is hurled back in time to 1300 AD after the events of Evil Dead 2. Mistaken for a spy, he's enslaved by Lord Arthur's men, but quickly proves his worth. To return to his own time, Ash must retrieve the Necronomicon, but botches the magic words, unleashing an army of skeletons led by his evil doppelganger. What follows is a chaotic siege of reluctant heroes' redemption arc, and one of the most quotable endings in cult cinema. And at first, I did not understand what they were going for with Ash being such like kind of like an asshole. But after watching Ash vs. Evil Dead, I now get it, and now I can appreciate this movie more, which is why I put it higher than the Evil Dead remake. As Army of Darkness isn't just a horror comedy, it's a meta commentary on heroism and genre tropes, as Ash is hailed as the chosen one, but he's selfish, arrogant, and often incompetent, as he literally forgets the words to like before picking up the Necronomicon. His journey just mocks the traditional hero's arc. He doesn't grow wiser, just more sarcastic. And we get the evil version of Ash. He isn't just a villain. He's Ash's mirroring of himself, as their conflict brings out Ash's inner flaws, his vanity, how much of a coward he is, and his unchecked ego that he has. And this is like another side of him that we haven't seen before. We weren't able to see much of this in the second movie, and in the first one he was a little bit different. He was charming, but he was sweet, as he was trying to have his girlfriend like move in with him and all this. And so this is a side of the character that we haven't seen before, and maybe this is through the trauma that he had just went through, and him like still trying to process all of it, and now he's trying to get home. But we see that Ash is kind of like turned into this chosen one when he doesn't want to be. He just wants to get home. He doesn't want to be the hero in all of this, but the circumstances force him to be. They saw a shotgun clash with the medieval swords and sorcery, and I just love like the combination of the two. as we see Ash in like this medieval times, and it kind of turns into like an adventure story of him going onto the journey to get the Necronomicon, and that's what I really liked about this movie. The little like slapstick comedy that's in here, I still wasn't a fan of it, but it was just okay. They were able to like tone it down a bit, as it was filled with more explosions and one-liners, which I did appreciate. And then Ash's constant bungling of magical incantations suggests that destiny is a joke and survival is pure dumb luck. And that's basically how he feels. Campbell as Ash Williams is a masterclass in physical comedy and genre self-awareness, as he's just a charming buffoon with the bravado of a hero. And the humor that goes on in this movie is like Looney Tunes humor. His exaggerated expressions, how he's able to like fall and like throw himself, and just the deadpan delivery that he has just elevates Ash to a like horror icon. Now I see why he's so iconic and why he's so beloved. He's that anchor, that thing that makes these movies what they are. Sam Raimi's direction this time around feels better balanced with the tones, as it's a great clash of chaos, creativity, and genre bending. Raimi uses his signature like angles and like whip pans and POV shots to create an immersive experience. And then we have scenes like Ash building his mechanical hand, or they throw in some great comedic precision in. And as someone who's not a fan of the humor that are in this movie in Evil Dead 2, I feel like they use it a lot better within this movie, as it's more built up and better executed, in my opinion. Sam Raimi's use of stop motion skeletons, puppetry, and prosthetics as like the skeleton army. Practical effects are just way better than CGI. And then the Deadite army is just grotesque, hilarious, and oddly charming. And just how Raimi is able to juggle horror, fantasy, and comedy. And then the battle scene by the end with catapults, exploding skeletons, and Ash's like car turned into like a Mad Max like vehicle. It's just a great mashup of all the genres together. And for me personally, I wish I could put this movie higher because I do. There are a lot of things about this movie that I really do enjoy, and I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. But I just feel like everything else on this list are far better. So Army of Darkness is a B-. Moving into 5th place, we have The Evil Dead, and it's directed by Sam Raimi and follows 5 college students, Ash, Linda, Cheryl, Scott, and Shelley, who retreat to a remote cabin in the woods. There they discover the Necronomicon, a book of the dead, and a tape recorder that plays incantations. This awakens demonic forces that possess the group one by one, and the movie spirals into a gruesome survival horror as Ash fights to stay alive while his friends become grotesque deadites. In the climax sees Ash burning the book to stop the evil, but the final scene leaves his fate unresolved. And the cabin isn't just in a remote location, it's a trap. Once the bridge collapses where they can't get across, the characters are cut off from civilization, and the setting becomes like a slow burn for fear and paranoia. Possession in this movie is grotesque and invasive, as with the scene with Cheryl being assaulted by the tree. It's just really unsettling and makes you feel really just like how it's filmed and how it's executed. And it just feels like overly glorified where it shouldn't be, but it symbolizes how evil strips away control, turning victims into puppets of violence. And yeah, it's just really grotesque, and it really makes you feel uncomfortable, especially in how in the second movie they kind of like make fun of it in a way, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth. And then we've seen in how the franchise kind of like tries to recreate it going on. They even did it in Evil Dead Rise with the mom in the elevator. They kind of like play off of that, but the original just does it in a way where it just feels disgusting. In this movie, we see as friends and lovers both become monstrous, and the horror isn't just in the gore, it's in watching the people you love become unrecognizable. And I feel like that's the one thing about this franchise that I really love, how we see the friends of Ash and then his girlfriend change, and then they're able to swap between the demonic expressions and mannerisms, and then switch back to them trying to manipulate Ash into giving in, into like believing that they're not evil and that the demon had gone away, and how they portray that in this movie I just really love. Then we see as Ash begins in this franchise, in this movie, as passive and unsure, but the trauma forces him to evolve, and by the end he's blood-soaked and an iconic hero forged into terror. And this is when like Bruce Campbell is more inexperienced. I even watched Within the Woods, which is like the short film that Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell made before they even made The Evil Dead. And like in this movie, Bruce Campbell's physicality is still unmatched. He's thrown, stabbed, drenched in blood, like, and he still manages to bring out the terror and disbelief and grit. Again, his expressive face and reactions become the blueprint for horror protagonists. Then Ellen Sandweiss as Cheryl, her transformation from innocent sister to snarling deadite is just chilling. Betsy Baker as Linda and Teresa Tilly as Shelley are dramatic, but their portrayals, once they turn, are effective. The exaggerated acting style adds to the dreamlike horror, like campy feel, making the possession scenes feel like twisted cinema. And then Sam Raimi's direction in this movie is a masterclass in like a low budget innovation, as it's the first time he uses the demon cam, which is legendary, as from what I found out, Raimi strapped a camera to some wooden boards and ran through the woods to create the POV of the evil force. And it's just amazing how it's evolved throughout the franchise. It's chaotic, immersive, and terrifying. And then his use of practical effects, even with the low budget, his use of stop motion animation, reverse photography, and gallons of fake blood to create grotesque visuals. It's just all really impressive, and it's just fun going back and seeing how they were able to make all of this from the get-go, from like the 80s. And then just the iconic sound design used as kind of like a psychological weapon. It just builds such an oppressive atmosphere. It's not just what you see, it's what you hear with the score and like the music that they use. It gets under your skin. Even watching Ash vs. Evil Dead at the beginning when they do the title card, I'm like, ooh, like that music, like it gets me every time when I watch it. And then once the evil is unleashed, the movie becomes a relentless horror fest with barely a moment to breathe, as the pacing just keeps going and everything just keeps escalating further and further. And yeah, I just like this movie better because it doesn't have like that campy slapstick humor. The first movie is a more serious approach, which I really enjoyed. And yeah, I think this is a great start for the franchise. And yeah, this was just such a great start for his franchise, and I just wish he would have went like the same route with the same tone and everything, and didn't change it up like he did. But The Evil Dead gets a B+. Moving into 4th place, we have Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1. Ash vs. Evil Dead is set 30 years after the original trilogy, as Ash is now a washed-up stalker at a convenience store, living in a trailer, avoiding responsibility in the horrors of his past, after accidentally unleashing the Deadites again. As he gets high and reads like one of the incantations, Ash is forced to become the reluctant hero once again. He teams up with his co-workers Pablo, who's his loyal sidekick, and Kelly, a fierce survivor, to battle demonic forces and the Necronomicon's chaos. And the season builds toward a climactic return to the infamous cabin, where this show kind of serves as like a before legacy sequel, where Ash must face his greatest fears and make a morally questionable choice to save himself. And again, Ash isn't your typical hero. He's selfish, crude, and emotionally stunted, but the show cleverly uses his flaws to explore how even the most unlikely person can rise to the occasion. And his redemption arc is messy and hilarious, but it's also surprisingly heartfelt, and you really kind of sympathize with him. And I feel like they use the humor that they tried to use in like the movies a lot better in this show, in my opinion, as we're able to see Ash's trauma from the original Evil Dead trilogy, which isn't just reference, it's baked into his every decision that he makes within the show, especially in the first season. The Deadites aren't just monsters, they're manifestations of his guilt, fear, and unresolved grief. And the cabin becomes a metaphor for the skeletons in his closet once we do get to that point in the season. And Pablo and Kelly aren't just sidekicks in this adventure, they're the emotional glue that keeps Ash from spiraling, from breaking. And their bond grows organically throughout these 10 episodes, and the show contrasts Ash's loner tendencies with the warmth and loyalty of his new crew, which like grows into almost like a family. And the show constantly mocks the idea of the chosen one, as Ash is no noble warrior. He's a guy who duct tapes a chainsaw to his hand, or not to his hand, his stump, because his hand isn't there, and dives headfirst into chaos. And it's just a satire of destiny tropes, but it still manages to make Ash's journey feel earned, which I feel like lacked in the second movie and a little bit in Army of Darkness. And I feel like I've done enough talking about Bruce Campbell, as he's still amazing as ever in this show. I really want to touch upon Ray Santiago as Pablo, who is the heart of the show. And Santiago plays him with a wide-eyed sincerity, grounding the madness with emotional depth. In his arc from timid clerk to a spiritual warrior is subtle but powerful. He's my favorite character within the show. Then you have Dana DiLorenzo as Kelly, as she's sarcastic and guarded, but DiLorenzo peels back layers to reveal a fierce, emotionally complex fighter, as she's like the victim at the beginning of the show who loses her parents to the Deadites. And her grief and rage fuel some of the season's most intense moments. And she holds her own against Ash's larger-than-life persona, which is so funny, and like their back and forth banter, it just gets me laughing and giggling. Something that I didn't like feel with Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2. Then Lucy Lawless as Ruby brings charm and mystery, as her performance is restrained but menacing, and she adds a layer of intrigue that hints at deeper lore, and we do explore that more down the road in the show. But she's always one step ahead of Ash and his team. I think she makes for one great antagonist for the show. Sam Raimi directed the pilot, and the first episode is a visual feast, as he uses his iconic signature like angles, pans, and his editing that scream Evil Dead. He sets the tone with the manic energy and gleeful gore, proving he hasn't lost his touch. And yeah, I feel like he did a lot better with the balancing of tones and genres within this show. And again, the show's commitment to old school splatter is a love letter to horror purists. If you choose CGI over practical effects, you're wrong. Just the blood sprays, possessed puppets, and grotesque creature designs give it a tactile, visceral feel that CGI just can't ever replicate. AI, CGI, it cannot touch practical effects. And then each episode is like 30 minutes long, so they're not long episodes. They're not 45 minutes. They're not an hour long. They're 30-minute episodes, and they're tight, punchy, and they're like really energized, often ending on cliffhangers that keep the momentum alive. And I watched it, and this whole show is like only like 15 hours, maybe less than 15 hours, because there's 10 episodes, 3 seasons each. And so I just binged the show like throughout a whole day, and I was just surprised at how much I didn't like feel dragged along throughout this whole show. Like there were some times where I felt it dragged, or like where time got repetitive, but I didn't want to stop watching. I wanted to keep going until the end, which I did. And just the short format forces the show to stay lean, and just there's no filler, just a bunch of thrills, and that's what I loved about it. And just the camera is just a character, just how it lurks, lunges, spins, and it just mirrors the chaos of the Deadites and keeps you off balance. And it just creates such a dynamic horror palette that I just love. And yeah, I give Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1 a B+. Now, my only nitpicks is that where I just have some nitpicks about the show, how I felt like each episode before they get to the cabin, like they're on the way, how it feels like one thing after the other stops them in their way, and then they have to stop, and it just felt really episodic, and it didn't feel like one complete thing, which I know older shows used to do. And I don't know, I just feel like I'm not used to it as I used to, and I feel like that's because I'm so used to how TV shows are made now. It's just they don't feel like how they used to, and so I'm not used to the feeling. But that's just my little nitpick. But Season 1 is not just a nostalgic revival, it's a bold reimagining that honors its roots while carving out new territory. Moving on to third place, we have Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 3, which was the final season after it got cancelled on Starz. And in this third season, Ash Williams, now a hometown hero in Elk Grove, Michigan, discovers he has a teenage daughter, Brandy, which was crazy to see. Ash with the daughter, that was crazy. This revelation adds a new emotional layer to his chainsaw-wielding persona, but peace is short-lived, evil resurfaces, and Ash must protect Brandy while battling Deadites, demonic forces, and a massive Kandarian demon in the apocalyptic finale. And Ash's discovery of his daughter Brandy forces him to confront the consequences of his reckless past. The show explores what it means to leave behind more than just carnage, as throughout this whole show we've seen Ash struggle with the thought of how everyone around him dies, everyone around him gets hurt. That's why he's always been a loner. And the question is, can Ash be a protector, a mentor, and a dad to Brandy? And it's a surprisingly tender storyline woven through all the chaos that we see going on. And then once we do meet Brandy, her arc is a descent into the grotesque world Ash inhabits, as her journey mirrors the viewers starting from disbelief and horror into resilience and evolving into resilience and killing these Deadites. And then Ruby returning as the villain, as she's been the villain throughout this whole show. Her creation of the demonic clone of Ash raises questions about what defines a person. Is Ash just a chainsaw and a catchphrase, or is there something deeper that makes him the chosen one? And that's a little nitpick I had about this season. I felt like they were kind of just reusing stuff that they had done in the franchise before, how we literally have another Ash clone, same almost like what we saw in Army of Darkness. And I just felt like it was kind of starting to get recycled, and it just didn't feel as fresh. Season 3 leads into the hero's journey style, as Ash is no longer just a reluctant fighter. He's a chosen warrior in a cosmic battle, as he's championed on, he's celebrated. There's a statue. He just opened up his father's hardware store, and now he's in commercials and marketing. He's became an icon in his small town, and now he's the one that everyone looks to save them. And then once Ruby's clone shows up by the end to kind of make everyone think that it's him and ruin how people view him, especially his daughter, it just makes me feel personal about the one thing Ash doesn't want is his daughter to see him in such a bad light. And then for a moment she sees him like a monster, and as the Ashy Slashy, as the town used to call him. And you can just see how it kind of breaks Ash, and it kind of makes him be no, this isn't me, there's an actual clone of me out there. Because everything he says doesn't make sense. It all sounds fake and it's all in his head, but no, it's actually real. And we kind of see his trauma start to come back a little bit as we see him look at his daughter as she's holding the dagger up to him, and yeah, it's just heartbreaking, and it makes for some great moments. And yeah, Aria Carver O'Neill's breakout performance, she grounds the show with emotional realism, reacting to the madness with genuine fear, confusion, and eventually fierce determination. And her chemistry with Bruce Campbell adds a new dynamic to the series, which I thought felt fresh, especially as she's kind of being manipulated by Ruby, played by Lucy Lawless, as she's magnetic and she's more manipulative and terrifying as she tries to get Brandy to turn on Ash. And it was just great seeing how that played out. And then we have Dana DeLorenzo and Ray Santiago in their arcs deep in the season, as Kelly's possession by Kaya is chilling, and especially seeing her death, I was like, no, why? But then she comes back, and then Pablo's evolution into his uncle Brujo gives him a mystical edge. Both actors bring heart and humor and just anchor the show's emotional core. I just love both these characters, Kelly and Pablo, so much. Pablo being my favorite, yeah. And then Rob Tapper's show running, he used season 3 to embrace a more serialized, myth-heavy structure. And the pacing is tighter, and the stakes feel like a horror epic masquerading as a comedy, which I enjoyed. Practical gore again. Show doubles down on old school effects, exploding heads, possessed mascots, and grotesque mini demons. And it's just all glorious and over the top. And then we see them travel through the other dimensions, through rifts, with all the lore and supernatural stuff. We see dreamscapes, deadlands, and rift dimensions as a mysterious flair. And just the camera work channels Raimi's signature style, and it just keeps you immersed into this chaotic adventure. And yeah, the season 3 balances horror, humor, and heartfelt drama, where it's not just blood and guts and just bad slapstick jokes. It's about legacy, sacrifice, and the absurdity of heroism. And season 3 doesn't just raise the stakes, it redefines what Ash vs. Evil Dead can be. It's a love letter to the fans, a character study in disguise, and a masterclass in genre blending. And I feel like people who haven't watched the show should give the show a try, really. But yeah, moving into second place, we have Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 2. As Season 2 picks up after Season 1 with Ash Williams leaving his brief retirement in Jacksonville as he made a deal with Ruby to where he can stop fighting and he can go run and hide and retire in Jacksonville like he always wanted to be. That was his plan from the get-go, from when he went to the cabin with his girlfriend. They planned to go to Jacksonville together. Now he finally got to go to Jacksonville, but then he's asked to return to Elk Grove, Michigan by a Deadite who shows up from Ruby, and there he's forced to confront his past, including the town that branded him Ashy Slashy, because once he got back to reality from the 1300s, no one believed him and thought he was crazy, and everyone thought that he killed everyone he was at the cabin with, and he's just forced to confront his past and team up with his former nemesis Ruby, who's from the first season and who now has a Necronomicon, and teaming up with Ruby, Pablo, Kelly, Ash battles a new demonic threat called Ball, a manipulative demon who can possess bodies and warp reality. And in this season, we see Ash's strained relationship with his father, Brock Williams, and I felt like it gave a nice emotional touch to the season. And then we see Pablo's disturbing connection with the Necronomicon, kind of giving his character more depth, as he's kind of like that sidekick who becomes a little gifted as he starts to turn into the Necronomicon, which was crazy. And then the time travel twist at the end as they go back to the 80s and rewrite the past to save the future. It's just, who loves a little time travel in their horror TV shows. But yeah, in the season we see Ash return to Elk Grove, where he's still seen as the town pariah, Ashy Slashy, and his journey in the season is about reclaiming his name, not through quiet reflection, but by chainsawing his way through Deadites. And it's a twisted take on the redemption arc where heroism is earned in blood and beer. Then the introduction of the new big bad Ball brings psychological horror to the forefront, and he doesn't just kill, he gaslights, manipulates, and warps reality. And we see this in Ash's Asylum episode, where it kind of reminds me of the one episode of Moon Knight. I know that's totally different, where they're in an asylum in Moon Knight. They really have similarities, and it's just a standout, blurring the line between what's a hallucination and what's possession in that one episode, which I thought was a great episode. Ash's relationship with his father, Brock, is hilariously toxic, and I just love every moment of it. The dynamic adds emotional weight, showing how Ash's bravado masks deep-seated insecurities and a craving for approval by his father and by the town. It just gives so much more character development to the character of Ash. Again, I feel like this series just dives deeper into this character that from the movies, and just what we haven't been able to see before, and that's what I really love about it. Well, one thing I really love about it. And the finale's time travel twist isn't just a sci-fi flair, it's a meditation on fate as Ash tries to rewrite history to save Pablo after Pablo dies, and yeah, that tore me up too. But the ripple effects raise questions about destiny and sacrifice. All of the performances are basically the same, but Lee Majors as Brock Williams is a revelation, as his grizzled charm and comedic timing elevate every scene that he's in. He's the perfect foil for Ash and like the perfect person to play his father. And their banter adds a new dimension to the franchise, in my opinion. Some of the best moments are like the morgue scene in episode 2. It's just infamous for a reason. It's grotesque, hilarious, and technically just impressive how they use the practical effects and just the camera shots. And I feel like this season really pushed the boundaries with practical effects that are both revolting and like artsy in a way. And just how they're able to perfectly balance all the tones, the horror, comedy, and action. It's just a direction that ensures that even the most absurd moments, like Ash battling a puppet of himself, feel just earned and like tonally like consistent, and or just feel like a part of the story. And then the town of Elk Grove becomes a character in itself, as the town's disdain for Ash, as they all like hate him and like protest against him coming back to the town, just adds stakes. In the asylum setting in the later episodes introduces a claustrophobic surreal atmosphere. Yeah, I think this season like nailed it when it came to like the perfect blend of the franchise. Season 2 doesn't just raise the stakes, it deepens the mythology and sharpens the emotional edges of this series, and what I think the perfect capture of like the earlier movies into TV form, and yeah, it's just perfect in my opinion. Moving on to first place, we have Evil Dead Rise, and Evil Dead Rise is the first movie that I ever saw. I saw it in theaters, and I did not know what I was getting into. As I come back to watch this movie, I realize all of like the inspiration and the homage that was taken from the earlier movies, and it just makes me appreciate this movie a lot more. As Evil Dead Rise is a blood-soaked reinvention that honors its roots while carving out a fresh identity. And the movie shifts the franchise signature setting from a remote cabin to a condemned apartment building in Los Angeles. It follows Beth, a pregnant guitar technician who visits her estranged sister Ellie, a single mother of 3. After an earthquake reveals a hidden vault containing the Naturom Demonto, a version of the Book of the Dead, Ellie becomes possessed by demonic forces. What unfolds is a claustrophobic, visceral battle for survival as Beth fights to protect Ellie's children from their now deadite mother. And the movie explores two sides of motherhood, Beth's reluctant journey into it, and Ellie's grotesque transformation into a demonic parody of maternal care. As Beth begins the film terrified of her pregnancy, but by the end she becomes a fierce protector, embracing her role as surrogate mother of her niece, and is kind of like now ready to like welcome and become a mother to her own baby, to her own child. Meanwhile, Ellie's deadite form weaponizes maternal intimacy, whispering twisted songs, using like these phrases to emotionally torment her children and to like torture them, and it just was really unsettling and really like unnerving, like watching Ellie in her like possessed form just like show kind of like a hatred, and like also when she tried to manipulate the niece or the youngest one to open the door for her. And yeah, I just was like, no, like it, why do this? Like, you just feel so bad for them. And the Book of the Dead in this movie isn't just a plot device, it's a metaphor for generational trauma, as the possession spreads like a curse, and Beth's fear of becoming like her sister, or worse, passing on something monstrous to her unborn child, adds psychological weight. As we get a little like references to like their mother, who I think was sick, something like that. And moving the setting to a condemned apartment building in Los Angeles just amplifies the theme of isolation. After the earthquake, like it takes like all the stairs like down to the ground are like destroyed, and so they're stuck up on this like top floor. You just feel like the like how isolated they are. Just like usually in horror movies they use like cabin in the woods or like something that's like remote from all civilization, when civilization is around them, but they're like so high up, and then it's like raining hard, so like if when they try to shout down from the window no one can hear them. It's just crazy how they're able to create that isolation while they're surrounded by civilization. It's just how they did it was perfect. The crumbling building around them mirrors the breakdown of family bonds and sanity. But yeah, Alyssa Sutherland as Ellie, her transformation from a loving mother to the deadite is a masterclass in physical and emotional horror, and how she changes her body with terrifying precision and delivering lines with a chilling blend of maternal warmth and demonic menace. Just her performance is so unsettling that even normal actions like brushing her hair become unsettling. Lily Sullivan as Beth brings a depth to a character who could have easily been a generic final girl, but her portrayal is grounded in vulnerability, and she evolves into a blood-soaked warrior as her emotional arc from self-doubt to motherly fighter is the film's beating heart. And I just love the journey that we see throughout this movie. And then we have the child actors, Morgan Davies, Gabrielle Eccles, and Nell Fisher, where Davies captures Danny's guilt and desperation as he's the one who finds the book and like plays the record recordings with the incantations and the rules and the lore, and all their times are limited, especially like the older ones. And then we see Eccles as Bridget, who gives a tragic edge as she becomes possessed, and just when she does, it's just unsettling. And then Nell Fisher as Cassie is both heartbreaking and brave, as she feels so like small and sweet. And then in scenes where she confronts her possessed mother, you're not my mommy anymore, or I know that you're not my mom anymore, and you're just like it tugs at your heartstrings, and that's what I love about this movie. And this movie is directed by Lee Cronin. I don't think I've seen any of his movies before, but he uses tight framing and dim lighting to create a sense of entrapment. The apartment becomes a place of dread with hallways and vents serving as conduits for terror. His use of mirrors, shadows, and blood-soaked imagery brings out classic horror influences. The movie's sound design is relentless, with creaking floors, distorted voices, and the squelch of flesh amplifies the tension. And then the pacing in this movie is brutal. After a brief setup, the horror escalates rapidly and never lets up. And then again, the practical effects just reign supreme within this franchise. The cheese grater scene is a standout, not just for like shock value, but how it's shot and lingers just long enough to make you like squirm and like cringe. And then the final showdown in the parking garage with the wood chipper and like the deadite monster is just a pure nightmare fuel. And yeah, this movie just does it for me each time. I think it's the best of this franchise. I know a lot of people are going to find this controversial or divisive, but I think the Evil Dead Rise is the best of the franchise. I know people are going to think Evil Dead 2 is, but again, this is just my list. Let me know what you think about it down below. I don't think I said it, but I gave Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 2 an A-. Evil Dead Rise gets an A+, and then Ash vs. Evil Dead Season 1 a B+. I don't think I said that. Hope you did enjoy. Subscribe if you are new to join the Gremlins, and turn post notifications on to get notified when I do post again. I'm trying to post a video every week. And don't forget to follow my socials down below in the description, because I'm posting more on my TikTok and on YouTube Shorts, which, well, you'll see on YouTube. But I also have a Twitter now. I have my Blue Sky. I have my Instagram. You can follow me on all those down below in the description. And let me know some feedback. Let me know what I can work on, what you'd like to see me improve on. Are you liking these longer videos more, or the short form content? Let me know in the comments. And let me know some other franchises you'd like to see me review, rank, make videos on. I'm really trying to change things up, trying to get work, trying to do newer releases, trying to do some older, go back and watch some things I haven't before. And so I'm just trying to do a balance of both. But yeah, I'll also have all the Evil Dead movies down below in the description, so you can check them out on Prime Video, because they'll help support the channel and me. So yeah, I hope y'all did enjoy, and check out the Evil Dead series down below right now.